out. Right. Okay. And if anybody needs captions, I will do that. I'll add that as well. Okay, great. So, my name is Kyle. I am the first year academic advisor for Kilachand. Some of you know, but I'm actually going to be transferring to another BU school next week. So this will be my last week in Kilachand. It's been a pleasure, but have to move on to other opportunities that may seem like a good new opportunity. So, but that's, you will still be left in good hands. Don't worry about that with our other advisors. So, so that's me. And I'm going to let our wonderful panelists introduce themselves now. Emily, why don't we start with you?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Emily Yoder. I use she, her pronouns, and I am a rising senior majoring in comparative literature and minoring in Latin and history. I'm originally from Southwestern Michigan, but most of my high school life took place in South Bend, Indiana, which you all might be more familiar with.
Yes, the home of Notre Dame, right?
Yes, and Pete Buttigieg.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
He is from there. Okay, Alina, next.
Hi, my name is Alina. I also use she, her pronouns. I'm a rising sophomore and I'm studying political science and economics. And I'm from Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, but I was born in Florida. So also a bit of moving around.
Wow. And Hannah.
Hi, my name's Hannah. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a rising junior majoring in political science and English, and I'm from Warren, Massachusetts, which is like central Massachusetts.
Oh, beautiful. Okay, so thank you all again for being here. And I thought we would just start off the first part of the evening with talking about study abroad. And before I have the students who are going to talk about their experiences talk, I will say that studying abroad when you're in Kilachand, it does work, but at least the way the curriculum is set up currently, the best times to study abroad, and really the only times to study abroad, are sophomore or junior year. And then, you know, if you do summer study abroad, then that shouldn't impact the regular academic year. But if you're going to go for a semester during your sophomore, should do it during your sophomore or junior year. Your first year is first year, and your senior year are going to be the most Kilachand heavy. So and there isn't room to study abroad then. I think we make an exception for students who are in the film and TV major in comm, because you have the opportunity to go to LA and study that. So and that I think only happens in your last semester in that major. So it's like, we want to give you that opportunity, but that's pretty much the only time I'm aware of that students are allowed to study abroad outside of the sophomore junior year. And that's not even really abroad, it's LA. So but it's still off campus. And there is a BU study abroad office, and they have their internal programs that are sponsored by BU. Some programs have BU housing abroad, but there's also external programs that you can apply for that are not through BU, and that can be perhaps a little more complicated because you have to make sure that your credits that you get at that school will transfer to BU. And I would say, I mean, hub credits don't come from transfer credits. So I guess I wouldn't, if you were going to do a program like that, don't expect to get hubs from it. But Emily just completed an external program last semester. So I would love for her to, I think it's a nice segue for her to talk about her experience and how she applied, like what made her think of it, and basically whatever you want to talk about, Emily.
Absolutely. So my case is a little bit exceptional because it's very specific to my interests and the flexibility that my major allows me, which is comparative literature. And it's a very small department. So I've been very close with my academic advisor since freshman year. So he was really willing to work with me and make this happen. But so I just got back from studying at the University of Oxford in Oxford, England for about 6 months. Their academic year is really different. So I actually did 2 terms there instead of 1 semester, which kind of has its pros and cons. Pros being I got more credits, cons being it's 6 months, so it's longer. And with something like that, I think my biggest advice, if you want to look outside of BU's study abroad programs, is plan very early. So I studied abroad during my junior spring, but I actually applied in February, or no, it was earlier than that. It was like December 2021, so over a year in advance. And external organizations might have vastly different timelines than BU ones. So honestly, like coming into your freshman year, I would start looking now. Because like I said, I had to submit this full draft of this application first semester my sophomore year. And it was a very intensive application. It had, I think, like 6 full essays, transcripts, like 3 letters of recommendation. And obviously, like Oxford is a very academically rigorous school. So that might kind of vary depending on the program you're looking at and if it had like an internship versus just pure academics. But also work with BU's external study abroad office. They were extremely helpful with me. Actually got me in touch with another student who did the same program a couple of years back, who I had like called over Thanksgiving break, got kind of the rundown on information from her. And they will also let you know the appropriate people to get in touch with, and making sure that whatever you do through external study abroad transfers, because like Kyle very importantly pointed out, things may not transfer. And Kilachand really helped me with my hub credits, but if I had not had my hub credits basically completed before doing this, I don't think it would have been possible. And like I said, my major also helped me because, so a major like comparative literature where you're in CAS, you kind of just have to cover like your language requirement for CAS, and then major specific requirements, but something like engineering or Questrom, where the classes are much more specified. So you have, you know, like, I'm realizing how little I actually know about those specifics, but like, I don't know, some specific engineering class that cannot be replicated anywhere but BU versus say like a high level history seminar that is definitely more similar to something like a class at Oxford where you're working one-on-one with a professor in an area of history. I think honestly, it's a lot easier to do external study abroad as a humanities major. I think it's much more difficult to do it in most STEM disciplines, and also in Questrom, the School of Business, or in the School of Engineering. But I had a wonderful experience with it. It was really academically challenging, really rewarding. I met some amazing people, learned a lot about like UK culture and what it's like being a student there. But I think also a major thing to consider with external study abroad is it's very likely that you will be the only BU student going into it, which I was. So I went into it not knowing anyone, didn't know a single soul there. My friends doing like the BU Dublin program or BU Ireland program were in with like, I think 20 to 30 other BU students. So like if the social life is something you're really concerned about and you'd rather not go into it alone, then external study abroad probably isn't for you. Because that was challenging in the beginning. Like I really had to put myself out there and get to know people. And you're also integrated into, I mean, obviously I can't speak for anything but Oxford, but my case was that I was integrated into a very different university life with students who had been there for a while. You know, it's like coming into BU as a junior, everyone kind of has like friend groups and clubs they're involved with. And you have to forge your own way in a foreign country, like in a totally different educational system. So there are definitely a lot of different angles to take with it. And obviously, since there are so many study abroad agencies like outside of BU, I can't generalize for anything other than what I did. But I would say my main takeaways from all of this, and I can elaborate on any of it, of course, would be like, look really early, talk it over with your advisor, make sure you know your degree requirements, and try to get those done ahead of time. And something that also helped me with Kilachand specifically, and this is something that you, I mean, anyone here is an incoming freshman, so you probably don't know much about your senior Keystone project, but I'm doing mine through my major versus designing an independent final project basically for my senior year. So that meant that I did not have to take a class in the spring that potentially could have impacted my going abroad. And Kyle, I think, was also absolutely right that it only works sophomore and junior year. And I personally would advocate for second semester junior year. I think that's really good timing because like you still kind of have a solidified life at BU. So you feel like when you come back, you're not, everyone won't have moved on without you, kind of like you have your place academically and clubs, socially, because you've been around for longer. But yeah, so that was kind of a lot of information at once that I just threw out there, but I would be happy to elaborate on any of it. The organization I worked with that I can share in the chat, because they have a really wide spread of programs, is called IFSA Butler. And they're basically a third-party study abroad organization that will work with you to get your transcript settled. Oh, actually, one other thing I want to talk about too is external study abroad finances. So a great thing about IFSA is that they have the ability to provide study abroad financial aid that corresponds to what you receive at BU. And I think, I'm not too informed on it, but I think BU does offer financial aid for study abroad that's proportionate to what you receive here. But if you do choose to do external study abroad, there's also a good chance that you may have to pay for all of it out of pocket, because your aid from BU obviously won't transfer if it's a third party. But yeah, like I said, that was just a huge unloading of information, and I can definitely circle back to any of it or answer questions.
I actually was wondering, did you live in like an Oxford dorm or like housing off campus, or I don't know how that worked.
Yeah, so I did live in an Oxford dorm, but one thing about the UK is that basically every college student has a single. So I had my own bedroom and my own bathroom, which was wonderful, but it also meant that I couldn't really meet people in my building easily. So all the connections I made like in the dining hall, or not even in my classes, because it's not classes, it's like one-on-one tutorials with professors. So it was kind of like in the dining hall or in other social scenarios versus classes in dorms, which was really different.
So you didn't have classes with other students, you just had tutorials with professors. Wow.
Yeah, and so the Oxford system, I would recommend it honestly to humanities students who really want to push themselves, because the model is that you meet with a professor once or twice a week. They give you a massive reading list that's basically a bibliography on a subject. You complete as much of the reading list as possible. It's impossible to finish all of it. It's like, 5 full books, and you have like a week to do it. And then probably like 18 to 25 academic articles on top of that. You're given an essay prompt, you write your essay. Your essay is 1,500 to 3,000 words, and then you present it to your professor for like 5 to 15 minutes at the start of the tutorial, and they basically tear it to shreds. But it's such a growth experience. And everyone is, they're super experienced academics in their field, but certainly intimidating. So like I said, if you want to push yourself.
Yeah. Wow. That sounds like my MFA program I was in. Like you're sitting there reading your work in front of everyone, and then they discuss it and like what works and what doesn't in front of you, and you can't say anything. So
Exactly.
I could not have done that as an undergrad though. Like that was not ready.
I will say, I think for STEM, it's more lecture based, but for like, because I was doing history, Latin, and comparative literature, and for like any of those disciplines, or also like philosophy, classics generally, it's very one-on-one. Sometimes you'll be in a small group. I had a tutorial partner for some of them, so it was me and one other student, but super small class size.
Right. Wow. That's really cool. And did you know you wanted to go to England or like Oxford specifically, or what was it that made you choose that one, I guess?
Yeah, honestly, the main draw for me was the tutorial system, because I love being a comparative literature major at BU, but I am the only comparative literature major in the class of 2024. So I kind of wanted to find somewhere that had a really strong humanities program, just to be kind of exposed to a wider community. And honestly, I'm planning on going to grad school as well, or at least applying to grad school. Hopefully it works out. But I kind of wanted something that would push my writing to the next level and really challenge me. And then I'm also my research interests are in Latin and kind of the reception of classics in English literature. So Oxford just made sense for that.
Okay, great. That's really great information. Thank you, Emily. And is Allison Sprague, is she still the external programs person?
No, unfortunately not. And she was wonderful, but she left BU actually, I think maybe at the beginning of last semester or even the end of fall semester. And I had a great experience with her, so it's too bad.
Man, I was gonna say, like, great, you have a good person to, I mean, I'm sure whoever's there now is fine, but I did correspond with her a little bit in the past few years and she seemed great. So I'm glad to know you had a good experience. But yeah, if any students want to put questions in the chat, asking Emily to elaborate on anything, like feel free, or I'm sure she'd be happy. I'm sure she'll give her email at the end of this and you can contact her if you want. Okay, let's move on to Hannah. Hannah, I believe you studied abroad in Geneva, Switzerland, and I think it was an internal BU program. So please tell us about it.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I studied abroad last semester, so it was my sophomore spring actually. I will say everyone else in my program was a junior. I was the only sophomore in the entire program, but with my schedule for the 4 years within Kilachand, it worked really well last semester. I honestly, my next 2 years seemed like they weren't really that much affected at all. So it's definitely possible, definitely works. But yeah, I was in Geneva and I was on the international relations track actually, which counted for credit for my political science major, which was also really nice. I was able to explore like a different segue in my studies while also getting credit at BU. I think it being an internal program definitely helped with that. I only had to ask like program managers or the study abroad office about things that would transfer my financial aid and scholarships, everything like that transfers as well in an internal program. That was really easy. For housing, I was actually off campus, but I lived with everyone in the BU study abroad program, which it was also with a public health program and a physics program. And there was a few external students as well. We had a few people from like Boston College or Colby College, Trinity College. There's a lot of different students in this program, but I went in knowing no one as well. And it was definitely a smaller program. I think there was about 40 students within just public health and international relations, but it was really easy to make friends because we all had classes together. And we all had like our living spaces were shared. We shared a kitchen. I had a roommate. So that was it was really easy to get to know people that way. We were not integrated within the University of Geneva like student population because we were there from January to May. And it was a half internship course and a half academics course, and our academics fell within their break. So all my classes were just with like a BU professor and students within the BU program. So that's how mine kind of went. After the academic portion, I had an internship where I had an internship with an organization that dealt with international human rights. It was actually really cool. It was right near the UN. We were able to do a UN tour as well within the BU program, which is really nice. I will say the BU program has a lot of excursions where we were able to like get out within Switzerland specifically, even France as well, where we were able to go with the entire program and it was fully paid for by the program, which is really nice. And I know a lot of other BU programs do it as well. I had a few friends who were in the BU Sydney program and they had stuff like that as well. So I'm pretty sure a lot of the internal programs have things like that. And like I said, it's just easier in an internal program because it's so like within BU, you already have a BU email, you already have that stuff. So it's a really easy transition, I guess. But yeah, it was super nice. I know the physics program actually went a lot longer. I think some students are still there. So that's really cool. They got to intern at CERN, which is a huge physics organization in Geneva. So BU definitely got us within Switzerland and Geneva itself, especially in a professional manner, which was really nice, which I feel like is something you kind of have to put yourself out there to really fully experience and immerse yourself within. But it was definitely a great experience in Geneva. I would definitely recommend it. It was great professional growth as well. I was able to work. I worked 40 hours a week, Monday through Friday. which was really it was really good actually. And on top of that, we took one class where it was basically like, I think that class was more about international organizations, but they're very accommodating with internships. So yeah, it was really fun, a great experience, and I would definitely recommend it to anyone interested in that.
Great, Hannah, thank you. Did you get hub units from those courses that you took, or from the program?
Yeah, I didn't. I believe there was one I could have gone, but I already received the hub
Okay.
credit, so it didn't have any effect on me. But I know a lot of internal programs, there are BU hub credits.
Yeah.
When I was just searching, because I mostly focused on internal programs, a lot of them had different credits. There was even some where, because I have two majors and majoring in political science and English, like the Sydney program, you could take an elective that would count towards the English major, if that makes sense. So there's definitely ways you can work around it and get more credits for your major, more credits for the hub unit.
Okay. And I mean, yeah, like when you had the internship, you were working 40 hours a week. What kind of work were you doing? I mean, I think it was human rights, but I guess what did a typical day look like, or was there a typical day?
Yeah, so I worked at UPR Info was the organization's name. It was a lot smaller. It was actually like kind of a hybrid model, I guess. I wasn't really hybrid, but other people in the office were. And what I would do is I would wake up every morning and take the train to work, which was in the UN International Area of Geneva, which is really cool to see. But I would help my supervisor with like administrative tasks. I also made some graphics, social media, things like that. I edited a lot because I was the only native English speaker in the office because everyone spoke French or had different native languages. So I had to do a lot of English editing, which was kind of fun. It was a great experience learning from so many different perspectives in one office as well. And one of their projects is based in the UN. So they have an event where they allow, like, I guess, human rights activists to come forward and talk about human rights issues within their own country. And that's in the United Nations. So I was able to go there. I was able to take photographs of the event and also help staff it for an entire week. So that was really cool. But yeah, it was definitely different every day for sure. And it was really based upon like the organization or the supervisor's needs. And it was a nonprofit. So, and I think most of the IR organizations that people interned at were nonprofits. So,
Mm-hmm. Very cool. And those excursions, so those, I know that you probably did those when you were taking the classes portion of the experience. And so those, did they have to do with like what you were studying, or was it just like, was it like a fun, just like a field trip or whatever?
yeah, it was actually throughout the entire program. So even when we were interning, it was spread out pretty evenly. And they were pretty much field trips. It was so nice. We were able to go with the entire program, like I said, but we would go to different cities within Switzerland. So there's one to the capital, Bern. We also went to like a skiing city, Sion, in France. There was a few other things we did. Like we went to a vineyard in Switzerland locally. It was pretty cool. It was just like field trips, and you got to sign up. Not everyone went. Like if you had like family visiting you, obviously, stuff like that. It was very like, if you want to go, you can, but it was really nice.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing. That sounds wonderful. Okay, so so I think with study abroad, there is of course there is a BU website for that, and I'm going to put it in the chat. And there are, like I said, other opportunities to study outside of BU. Like there's a Washington, DC internship program that's in both the summer and in the academic year. And like I said, an LA program. I really was hoping that a Kilachand student who did the LA program could be here tonight, but it did not work out. But and this student isn't even like in media. She's not studying, she's not in comm, she's actually in Questrom, and she's on the law track, but she studied like entertainment law in LA. So pretty cool opportunity. Like some diverse opportunities. So it's nice. Okay, thank you for putting your email in there, Hannah. Okay, and then I would say let's move on to the KHC experiential learning portion of the evening. So, Kilachand BU has different experiential learning opportunities, but Kilachand itself has a few as well. So, I think the one that we'll start with is the Kilachand internship program. And this is a program where students find an opportunity, and it has to be related to social justice, a nonprofit organization. And because often those opportunities are unpaid, Kilachand will fund them. So you have the opportunity to, do social justice work and not have to worry about, getting paid basically for it. So Alina is doing the Kilachand internship program right now, I believe. Is that you're doing it this summer? Okay, great. And so would love to hear, where you're working, how you found the place, and the process of applying.
Yeah, so like I mentioned before, I'm from Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and so I wanted to stay home this summer. And so the entire process started with me trying to look for internships near where I live for the summer. And currently I'm working at the Lehigh Valley Justice Institute. It's a nonprofit organization geared around doing research for our local community. So right now I'm working on a project trying to figure out the socioeconomic costs of incarceration. So not just like how much it costs to like upkeep jails, but like what's like the cost to like the families, how much they're paying, or like how that affects the children, mental health, stuff like that we don't really think about, and trying to like basically calculate a number that's like tangible to people, like what percentage of GDP that is. So that was really interesting to me because, like I mentioned, I'm doing political science and economics, so it seemed like a really good cross between the two. And doing research is just such a good experience, such a good like hands-on experience to try to like take my own initiative and do stuff. So once I got the internship, and it was unpaid, of course, and so I learned about KIP, and the application was really straightforward. Like Kyle said, it's your internship has to be related to social justice. So I just had to like write explaining that, and so I was like, this is something that I want to do to work towards helping my community, etc. And so then I found out in about, I think it was April, so about 2 months before my internship was starting, while we were still at school. And it's been extremely straightforward. I log my hours at the Justice Institute. I'm doing both virtual and in-person hours. So I just have to make sure to keep a log of it. I have a contact at Kilachand. His name is Rick. He works in the office, in the Kilachand office. He's really great. And so, yeah, it's just been really great to have the support of the stipend while being able to also do this work. So it's just, I can do something for the nonprofit as well, while not have to worry about money in that sense while I'm working over the summer.
Great. Yeah, I mean, and that's why it was started, was to take that pressure off of you or any student that wants to do social justice work. Because yes, like often those are not paid opportunities. So that's great. That must be like a really kind of hard job too, though, just with like the emotional toll that I would think, like learning about how that affects families. And because like, families probably have to like to visit, they have to travel, and yeah, I can't imagine. So, but that's really great work. Thank you for sharing and for doing that. Yeah, and you were very good about, I think you emailed me maybe in February or something, and we're like, when is that application coming out? And I'm like, I'm not sure, but it should be out soon. And you were just like right on it. So
yeah, I got very lucky because I was looking for internships really early. That's something I would recommend, like as a freshman. Like I was just personally really nervous about it, but definitely start looking like in like December, because a lot of applications are open even earlier than that. But I reached out to the organization during winter break and had my interview over winter break, and they let me know like before I even got back to school for the spring semester. So it was really like helpful to be able to just like know before so I could plan it out. And I was really grateful to have KIP so that I could also plan that out as well.
Are there other interns working with you, or is it you and basically just like staff that work there?
For this specific project, it's just me and staff, but there are a couple other interns doing some other projects. So we see each other in the office, but we don't really do much work together. But
Okay.
it's still nice to be
Yeah.
in person and see other people like that.
Oh, yes. No, I agree. And there are a few, I do know of another student who graduated this past year. She actually did the KIP as well, the Kilachand internship program. But she did it, I guess she got the idea for what she wanted to do, or she wanted to do research. But she got the idea, I think, from being in one of our Kilachand classes, which is KHC 302, which is a global challenges course on forced displacement and refugee crises. And she worked with Mohammed Zaman, who co-teaches that course. And she got funding to work with him on research in some area related to that. So basically, like, you don't always have to even look for internships like outside of school, like or funding. Like funding can come and opportunities can come in the classroom. You just have to put yourself out there and be open. And I mean, I guess don't be afraid to, talk to professors and, ask if they are looking for help or or anything like that. And actually, another of our students, he didn't do it through KIP, but he also just graduated. His name is Spencer Morgan. And because Kilachand has relationships with like the Boston Ballet, last year's class we went to a performance, like a dance one night. But I know that they've done it before in the past. And Spencer, I don't know, I think he got in touch with somebody that he met at the theater, or I'm not quite sure what happened. I know that he was talking about this last year though, and he was able to get an internship out of that connection. So yeah, he I think worked for either a summer or a semester with the Boston Ballet. So it's opportunities are everywhere. So just be open to them. Okay, so along with the Kilachand internship program, there is something called Beams. And I'm going to put that in the chat. And that is, okay. And I'm gonna try to share my screen. Okay. So yeah, it's a course that students can take. It's offered in the spring semester, or at least it has been the past 2 springs I've been with Kilachand. And so yeah, it's the BU School of Medicine, Education, Advising, and Mentoring in STEM. And so the BU School of Medicine, the BEAMS, that is the acronym for it. It's a youth pathway to health careers program that aims to recruit, develop, and retain underrepresented youth from Boston and other areas of Massachusetts in post-secondary STEM education, in an ongoing effort to diversify the healthcare workforce. And Professor Ahrens, who is one of our postdocs, taught it last spring, and it's like a small class. I think there's like 9 students involved who can take it. And I mean, it's like a regular class, but it offers you, or it fulfills a hub unit. It does give you, if you need it, you may already fulfill it, but individual and community hub. And it is, let me see. Stop the share. So it is a hub course, and I'm going to put the hub name in it just so you can, it's only offered in the spring, so you can look it up for when you're registering for spring. But I think it's mostly, I find students who are interested in going into healthcare want to take it. I know a couple of first years that took it that are on the pre-health track. So, and every student that I know that's taken it has said it's been a really rewarding experience. I mean, you're working with students in the Boston public school system. Professor Ahrens is great as well. And it's just like a nice, there's a lot of bonding, I think that goes on. And, it's for people who, want to go into the healthcare industry and help, and also help underrepresented students become a part of that. So it's a great program, and I highly recommend it for any students that are interested in it. And last spring it was, I don't know if it'll be the same next spring, but it met once a week. There were 9 students, and it was like from 4:30 to 6:15 every Wednesday. And I think it's just like a 6-week course too. I don't think it's the whole semester. So there's that. That'll give you a little more space as well. And then there's also UROP, which is the Undergraduate Research Opportunities Program at BU. And that is a BU program, but Emily is actually doing that program right now. So, I mean, Kilachand students can do it. So, Emily, why don't you, would love to hear about what you're doing and how that came about.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's actually a great segue from what you were talking about with faculty relationships, because the way I landed on UROP, the Undergraduate Research Opportunities Program, is so I was at Oxford until June 17th, and the calendar did not line up with American internships whatsoever. I could not find a single internship to even apply for that was not like well underway by then. And so I was kind of like frantically looking for jobs in Boston, or jobs at home. Actually, I was initially planning on staying home for the summer. And I reached out to one of the professors that I'm pretty close with in my department and just asked if he knew of anyone looking for like a research assistant or a tutor for the summer. And he was like, oh, well, actually, I happen to be the director of the Global Medieval Studies program, which I would also recommend to anyone. It's kind of new. It's just a minor. It's up and coming, but very interdisciplinary, very individualized, kind of follows the Kilachand mission well. But he was like, I'm developing a new website for the Global Medieval Studies program, and I'm interested in the kind of like increasingly global focuses in medieval studies, because historically it's been very like Eurocentric and centered around England, Germany, France, versus like the Muslim world and Southeast Asia, and Northern Africa as well. So he and I applied for UROP funding together so that I could basically work for him for 20 hours a week throughout the summer, being paid by a UROP stipend, because he obviously couldn't afford to just pay me out of pocket for this work. And so we put together an application, actually passed the deadline, which had been extended for humanities only, conveniently. And I received the funding to work on this website project with him. And it's really, I didn't realize, honestly, until I applied, like how diverse of funding it is. I would definitely encourage humanities students specifically to apply, because we're underrepresented in research funding at BU. So they're really desperate to fund humanities projects. And I think it's honestly easier to get humanities funding. But the application is pretty straightforward. It's basically like title of a project, abstract project. You do need a faculty supervisor, but oftentimes students will either help faculty with pre-existing research, or they'll develop a project together. Another new really common pathway is getting UROP funding for your senior keystone for Kilachand. So for like research materials, or if you're doing research that involves like, I don't know, like travel, it can fund travel. So there's just a huge range of uses for the funding, which is really amazing. And it can be for the summer or for individual semesters. I'm not sure if you can get funding for a full academic year. I think you might be able to. But yeah, so the application, it's basically just abstract, a concrete timeline for the project, feasibility of the project, and then explain why this project is needed or why it will have an impact and like how exactly you and your mentor are going to accomplish that. And yeah, I think that about covers it.
Thank you. Yeah, we actually learned at the end of March, in the past, or we knew this before, but Kilachand students were not eligible for Europe funding, at least for Keystone, because Kilachand funds Keystone. But Europe is now awarding summer funding to Kilachand students.
Oh, so it's just for the summer. Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah. So that's great though, that there's that we can work together on that. And yeah, so because I've heard different ways students can get opportunities. So yeah, like sounds like you just, went ahead and contacted your faculty person. And then you applied to Europe but you said like, I already have like this, because I know sometimes students, they like look at Europe, like the website, to see what opportunities faculty have posted. So there is sometimes, yes, you can look there, but if there's not anything there that's going to maybe like meet your interests, you can, like Emily did, just, be proactive and go out there and ask a faculty member, and then perhaps get funding that way. But Europe, actually, they have a staff. They're very nice. They're very helpful. And I know the associate director. I've worked with her before. When I was in the math department, I had her do a presentation on Europe for students. And math students, a lot of them want to do, a lot of them ask me about internship or research opportunities. And I think you're right, Emily. There probably are going to be more opportunities for humanities than maybe STEM. I mean, I think there's some opportunities, but I did find that it did sometimes seem like it was harder for students to find Europe unless they made the connection with the faculty. I don't know that there are going to be a ton listed on the website, but I did put the Europe website in the chat. So I encourage you to look at it. It includes, their schedule. You can schedule a Zoom meeting with a staff member, and they will, if you're like, I feel kind of nervous about reaching out to a professor, or how do I go about that? They will meet with you to talk to you about how to reach out to professors, like, best practices, do's and don'ts, that kind of thing. And yeah, it's a really great opportunity, and they're here to help you. And they list like funding and eligibility, and if there are research opportunities already available, they do list them. So
something I forgot to mention that's also
Yeah.
pretty crucial for summer research is that Europe does provide housing. I didn't go with the Europe provided housing primarily because it did not have air conditioning. But there is a provided like BU housing option, which is BU dorms for a decreased rate. But if you choose to live off campus, which is what I decided to do, I'm just subletting a friend's apartment for the summer, they will give you a housing stipend. And for me personally, it didn't cover the entire expenses, but it made it significantly more affordable, one, than BU housing would have been, and two, than just living in Boston for the summer would have been otherwise. So not only do they give you a stipend that's basically like a salary for the work you're doing, but they will also help you out with housing financially.
That's huge in Boston. And I totally understand the AC thing. I cannot, I mean, I don't have AC in my apartment right now. I mean, I'm at my parents' house in North Carolina and they have AC, so that's good. But I am going to be back in Boston next week, and I'm not looking forward to the, I have a manual or an AC, it's on wheels, but it's my windows are really up high, and I have to try to find a way to funnel the air through those funnel things basically, and it doesn't really reach up high enough. So I don't know what I'm gonna do. Anyway, yeah, so I don't have, oh, I think one major thing that I just want to impress upon students thinking about applying for internships or research opportunity, anything like that, is if you do get an interview for something like that, always send a thank you email after that, even if, you know, you don't, like, even if you don't get it, I mean, you're not going to know right away anyway, probably. But anytime a company or an organization or a faculty member takes time to interview you and give you that opportunity, it really is, it really will make a good impression if you write back, or if you write them an email thanking them for their time and giving you the opportunity, because I don't know that a lot of people are doing that today, but I always do it though when I'm applying for a job, and I do think the last few jobs I've gotten, that's I did thank everyone involved, that I learned their names and I sent them all emails. And I think with email, I get not wanting to like write long, letters. Like my handwriting is atrocious, so no one would be able to read my letters anyway. But I think with email, it doesn't have to be a long one, just a nice succinct thank you. And I think that will go a long way. I don't know if my panelists would agree, but probably. Okay. So that's pretty much what I have as far as presentation goes. But if any students have, further questions that you wanted to ask, that's totally fine. We have 10 more minutes. Or we can close out tonight. So I'll leave it up to the students, or if there is anything the panelists want to add.
I think just adding to my little study abroad experience, because I think something I didn't talk about was like the opportunities you have outside of academics. So something that was unique about Oxford is we had a 6-week long break in the middle of the 2 terms. So I know that wanting to travel outside of your host country is a really big appeal for study abroad. So I was very much able to do that. Like I went to Croatia and France for a couple of weeks, and kind of had that space in there to do that. So while it was really academically rigorous, there was also travel potential and a very vibrant social life at Oxford too.
You had 6 weeks between, because I know they have these things like Michaelmas term.
Yeah, Michaelmas, Hillary, and Trinity. Yeah.
So is it like they're on a quarter, or not a quarter, but like a trimester thing, or?
Yeah, it's basically 3 trimesters with 6 weeks in between. And then it's basically 8 weeks on of school, 6 off, 8 on, 6 off, 8 on.
Wow. So you had 6 weeks. That's great. Cause I mean, I did wonder, it sounded like you were just working all the time there, but no.
Hugely prevented burnout. I think I actually almost prefer it to building towards midterms and finals, because it's you really go for 8 weeks, but then you have nothing for 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's great. Yeah, I'm glad that you were able to travel, because it doesn't sound like it was built into your program the way it was into Hannah's program.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I studied abroad in Ireland, I mean, years ago, and not through BU. Yeah, I did it within BU, and not BU, but I did it within my undergrad, and I lived with, all my fellow students, from America, and we lived in housing outside of, it wasn't on campus or anything. It was apartments. So, and that, that had pros and cons. It was kind of like having undergrad America in Ireland, but but I still got to be in Ireland, and it was great. We had excursions that were organized by the faculty member who went with us. So I highly recommend studying abroad if you can. It's a great opportunity. We have a question from Cyrus. Hello, would you happen to know if pre-med students are able to go abroad? Thank you. That is a good question. It might be, actually, yes, I do know of some pre-med students that have done it. There's a STEM program in Spain that I know a student did the fall of their sophomore year. I think they went to Madrid, and I know there are some other students who are planning to go to another part of Spain in their sophomore spring. But it's like, I think it's for engineering, like specifically for engineering students. And some of them might be on the pre-health track because it's biomedical engineering students. So yes, I think there are possibilities to do that, depending on what else you're doing besides the pre-med. Plus, like, some majors are going to be like biomedical engineering itself, even without being on the pre-health track, that's pretty tight. I mean, it's hard to fit even Kilachand into that. So, but like, I would say maybe if you're a sociology major, but also pre-health, which, you know, you can major whenever you want as a pre-health student, then you would have a little more flexibility, I think. So, but the answer is yes. I do know of pre-health students that have studied abroad. And remember, you can also go in the summer if it works, if it ends up working for you, but then it doesn't take time out of your academic year. So, any other questions or comments, whatever? Okay, well, thank you so much for being here, everybody. Thank you to Emily, Hannah, and Alina. I could not have done this without you. You Kilachand students, our leaders are so informative and just wonderful speakers, and they make Kilachand such a joyful place to be, and I will miss it. So thank you so much for enriching yet another evening for me. And this is recorded. We will post it soon to the website. But thank you so much, everybody, for attending. And our panelists put their emails in the chat, so if you want to follow up with them. But thank you so much, and have a great rest of your night or day, depending on where you are. Bye-bye. Thank you. Thanks a lot.